Today I did an interview with Barbato. He works at Too Good To Go. It's a startup that helps reduce food waste. But we didn't talk about his job too much today. We mainly talked about his new book. He wrote a book during COVID called The Becoming Mindset. I really like it because he talked about his journey from the age of 2 when he had type 1 diabetes and how he made that experience part of his life, and he come up with this becoming mindset. You know, it's someone sharing his experience with you and makes your life better. Overall, he's a really positive person. I think when I know him, he was working at Lime. You remember those scooters all around the cities? Like the scooters, Lime scooters. He said that was his first big opportunity. He shared about how he got the job. He got his job through one of the partners at Andressen Horowitz. So it's a really famous VC in the Valley. So he shared about how to approach VCs. So here we go. Hope you enjoy it. Hi, this is Flora. This is Flora. This is Flora again. Flora'S Street interview.
Yeah, so when I think about the becoming mindset, like you said, so I've been through a lot of crap in my life, especially health-wise, right? Missing 200 plus days of school, hundreds of doctor's appointments, over a dozen hospitalizations, that sort of stuff. And I think similarly to you, like I never really thought far into the future because of what those things were doing to me. For me, it was like, well, how do I fight now? Like, how do I feel better tomorrow versus like in a year? And my mindset really started to change. And where I kind of started thinking about the becoming mindset was when I went and moved to San Francisco. So I got to a point where I needed my first surgery. I had a pretty decent breathing issue that needed to be resolved. And I kind of came out of it and I was, you know, laying in bed after and, you know, feeling miserable, not feeling great, trying to recover. I was watching all these videos about pain. And for me, it was crazy because it was just a lot of negativity and I was not in the most positive place. So adding negativity to my situation, I was like, I don't really want to think about this, right? So I started to find, you know, certain videos of people who were really positive and in the subtitle of the book, right? Like we're turning their pain into power. And I thought that was really powerful. And I think the other thing I think about when becoming is a lot of people talk about this concept of overcoming, right? Like you overcame your challenges, you overcame that. And for me, it's like, well, how do you actually overcome something, right? Like it doesn't go away. If you break your back and you heal and you go to physical therapy, like your back's still at risk of breaking again in the future. So you have to maintain it, right? Yeah. And I think similar to me being a type 1 diabetic is it's an incurable disease. It's never going to go away. So I have to build a relationship with it. I have to respect it, knowing the power it has and just like really being cognizant of what I eat, what I do, when I do it, how I do it, so that things can start to go my way. And I think for the first time in my life, actually about a week ago, I did some blood work and the big metric in the diabetes world called your A1C, which is a measure of the last 90 days. And ideally you want to be like in the 6s. If you're under 6, it potentially means you're like at non-diabetic levels. And for the first time in my life, I was under 6. And yeah, thank you. So I'm sitting at a 5.5, which is really cool. So for now, it's all about, you know, keeping it up. And something that I think if you're ever trying to get into startups, one of the best ways by far, in my opinion, is trying to get connected to venture capital firms, even if you don't know them. The thing that's funny, right, is VCs are like hawks. They're constantly on their email, they're constantly texting, they're constantly communicating. So it's actually not as difficult to reach out to a VC. Like the thing is when you're pitching your company, it's different, right? Because they get thousands of requests, they're really going to be picky. But once you invest in a company, one of your top goals is to make sure that they hire great talent, right? So even if I reach out to a VC and someone I've never met, don't even know, usually some of the bigger ones have like a talent team for things so they can connect you. And that's exactly what happened to me with Lime. Actually, funny enough, when I was in college, I was at a hackathon at Brown University. And my co-founder at Shelfie, one of my close friends, is working on the coding and everything. And we've got this team that we're working with, totally different project. And I'm not a programmer, so I'm just kind of walking around networking, meeting people, just kind of seeing, listening, learning. And one of the VC firms there was Andressen Horowitz, and they were recruiting for talent to potentially for their portfolio companies. And I just kept in touch with the woman for a year or two, just kept saying, hello, how are things going? Had a good conversation when we were there. And then kind of thought about it. And I was like, well, I'm not trying to get investments anymore, but this is, they have a talent team. So let me reach out, and was super fortunate that when I sent my information over, that, people at Lime were interested in hearing more, and we just had a conversation or 5 or 6, and then ended up being able to join the team after a bit of time.
Oh, okay. So then how did you first get in touch with her?
In a sense, yeah. So the hackathon, we were just creating something from scratch just for fun with a group of people we had randomly met. But at first, totally, like trying to think about how we could fundraise, and knowing what I know now, right? Andressen is way too big of a firm to even think about, but kind of that young ambition of like, let me see what makes sense and what I can actually go after. And then, aim high. And then if I end up here, see what we kind of get after.
Okay. So if people who are interested in doing the same thing that you did, but they don't really have a connection with the VCs, do you have any suggestions for them? Like in what way they can probably get in touch with those people?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite ways is LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn, but the thing within LinkedIn, it's super helpful if they respond. But one thing that I get to, right, as a hiring manager is a lot of people just reach out, but don't add a note. I think you have to add a note these days because of the number of people reaching out to people. That's just like a very easy way to stand out. And the best way to stand out in that note is to have a clear ask, right? Especially with these people who don't have a ton of time, right? So it's like, hey, saw you invested in company X. My experience is in skill set Y. Any chance you can connect me to company because I saw this open position, right? Like just making it as clear as you possibly can of what the ask is. The other thing that's fun is because VCs want, startups to reach out to them as well. A lot of their emails are online, on their websites, on their pages, their profiles. So again, I think it just comes down to you, like selling yourself, right? Like a great subject line, making it super clear what the ask is. And the other thing that I think is so important in these things is put the ask out there. Don't just like send your resume. Don't just send like the job description. Don't make 10 bullet points about why you're the best for the job, because at that point you're selling to the wrong person. Because the company is the one that's going to hire you. The VC is just there as a gateway. So for me, it's all about being really succinct with your message and really clear on the ask. And then
so what kind of ask? Can you direct, I am so-and-so, I'm interested in joining one of the companies. Can you direct me to one of the team members? Something like that. Yeah, sure. So I think you can be super targeted, right? And so like, let's say I reach out to a VC firm. Let's just say it's Flora'S VC. So I'd say, hey, Flora, like I'd put even like a subject line, like interested in, I don't know, company MWB or something like that. And my note would be like, hey, Flora, I always start out like nice, like hope all is well, right? And just say, hey, saw you invested in MWB. I love their growth, or I love what they're up to. And given my background in marketing and project management and operations, I saw that they're hiring for a marketing project manager. I'm happy to share more details if you'd like, but is there any way I could be connected to the team over there? And I think that's a nice gateway, because in the early days, what for better or worse is a lot of early stage startups work off of referrals. Whereas like, I think once you get to the bigger company, there's actually a lot of process and everything, which is a good thing, right? Especially to help prevent things like bias. But in the early days, it's just a lot of working with referrals and, startup experience and things like that. For me, it's just about how can you stand out with the least amount of words, right? Because I think I have people reach out to me now who send me like, hey, love this role at the company. And they send me like 8 to 10 paragraphs and their resume. And it's just,
I get it. It's just really difficult to read through that given like all of the people who do that, right? So it's just like, how can you stand out at like the highest level for this person? And then the best thing is sometimes they'll just say, hey, write a quick note and I'll forward it to the team. So they want to do the least amount of work possible.
Mm-hmm.
But also thinking about how do you make their life as easy as possible by making yourself like a really easy person to say yes to. I think when I think about it, right, so when I was 2 years old, that's when I was diagnosed with type 1. And anyone with a blood glucose level over 125, right, is at risk for diabetes. And I was looking at my medical reports when I was writing the book, and it just said the number 1,000 with an asterisk, which means it was actually higher than 1,000, and the scale just didn't go above, which means like easily could have been into a coma or actually easily could have died. So ended up in the intensive care unit for a few weeks. And something that even writing the book that I really learned about myself, I think it's just like in the work world, I think it's just being really grateful for every day, right? Because every day is a bonus. Like it could have ended for me too. Yeah. That's the way I kind of look at it, right? And the other thing for me, it's just this really strong sense of resilience where if I really want to get something, I'm going to go get it. And it's because I feel like I hit rock bottom very early on, right? Like with all these illnesses and sickness and hospitalizations. And it's just like humans can only handle so much overwhelming, different actions at the same time. So I think resilience has been the biggest one. And then I think the other thing that it's really made me think about is not being in my own head, which I think is something that is very easy to do. And the way I think of that is like talking myself out of things, right? Sometimes I might say, well, yeah, maybe I could get it, or maybe I could go after it. Maybe I should reach out to this person, but are they going to respond? Are they not going to like talking myself out of it? Now I'm just like, all right, I'm going to reach out. I'll make a good case. And if they don't respond, they don't respond, right? Like I'll reach out to the next person or I'll change direction. So for me, I think a true startup passion, it's all about the pivot, right? Because my life has changed numerous times based on my health. And now I'm finally, for the first time, in like a really good place after 20 something years. So it's just thinking about how to keep that going and pushing forward. And for me, it's about the resilience and just every time you get knocked down, you just got to keep getting back up and just pushing forward. And I think the last thing I'd say is the way I think about health into like career is a lot of times people, even within, companies I've worked at, right, is there's a lot of thought on the past and what went wrong, which I think is good because it's a great learning experience. But for me, it's just about not getting caught up in the past and really thinking about it as a learning experience and thinking about, all right, this already happened. How do we take this and move forward? What do we need to rectify? What do we need to change? Do we not do this? Do we do this? And just really thinking about how to keep pushing forward while learning from the past versus thinking too heavily on the past and overwhelming yourself and kind of getting in your own head to actually push forward.
I'm happy that I constantly reach out to you so that we had a conversation like this. When I started my series, I am a nobody, but I was also miserable enough. I felt like what could be worse than just, I just ask them. And if they don't respond, then I'll keep trying. But I'm really grateful for this book. When I was younger, when I was depressed, I got to see this book. I'll feel a lot better. Just like a good friend that's talking to you about their experience and what they have seen, what research they have seen. Also, I didn't know Nick Jonas had type 1 diabetes. That kind of thing makes you feel better. I'm not, the most miserable person. Yeah, everybody has their problems, but this is how they overcome and become who they are now. So there's always hope. This is what I get from it. So I really like it.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I think one thing I would recommend too is I think sometimes it can be dangerous to compare as well, because I think everyone's going through something.
Yeah.
And it's just, for me, it's always thinking about how do you go through things together, right? Like something that was a very different change for me, especially coming from like an Italian American family where yelling and raising your voice are like a commonality, is thinking deeply about, well, if someone is yelling, Why are they yelling? Something going on in their life? Are they upset? Are they just taking it out on me? Is it something I did? Whereas like it'd be super easy for someone to yell at me and just yell back, right? But what does that actually solve? So I think it's just thinking about, you know, we're all in this together, right? 6 in 10 Americans have a chronic illness, for example. And yeah, I think it's just all about the shared experience and moments like this where you connect with people and talk to people about things that are pretty personal, right? And be vulnerable. And I think that to me is the biggest strength, right? Like telling your story and connecting, right? Humans inherently just want to connect, communicate.
Yeah.
And I think that's super powerful.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I didn't pass the time. Say goodbye. Bye.
Bye.